And this is a project of the UPF's International Summit Council for Peace. And IAFLP affirms and uplifts the unique and essential role of First Ladies in contributing to peace and development. It works in collaboration with the Women's Federation for World Peace, bringing together current and former First Ladies from throughout the world, drawing on their experience and wisdom as women leaders and as role models who serve their countries and their societies in very essential and significant ways. Also, with the First Ladies come tremendous people who've worked with the staff, worked with First Ladies of other countries, and those are all part of our organization, and we work with all of these people. So I would like to especially recognize Rosie Giuliano, the IAFLP representative in South America, and Gail Veith, the IAFLP representative in Central America and the Caribbean. They've all worked very much behind the scenes to prepare this. And I'm Cindy Pfeiffer, and I'm your moderator for today. I work with the Women in Leadership for the Washington Times Foundation, and I'm the regional coordinator in America for the IAFLP. So thank you. Our first presenter is First Lady Yumi Hogan from Maryland, USA. And she has a pre-recorded message that we'll share, but I'd like to just tell a little bit about her. Not only is she the First Lady in Maryland, but she's also the first Korean American First Lady in the United States. She's the youngest of 8 children and emigrated to America when she was in her 20s. And she's also an artist that uses her sumi ink method of Korean hanji paper art. 27 of her abstract landscapes have been featured at art shows, and she has used the proceeds to donate to art therapy programs for pediatric cancer patients. First Lady Yumi Hogan advocates for the benefits of art therapy in recovery programs. And she's started something called Yumi Cares, which stands for Children's Art for Recovery, Empowerment, and Strength. She has received the National Association of Secretaries of State Medallion Award for her work to benefit victims of domestic violence and human trafficking. She's also an advocate for food security. She supports veterans, first responders, and their families, and has received numerous humanitarian awards. She continues to teach as an adjunct faculty member at the Maryland Institute College of Art. So we'll watch her welcoming remarks that she gave to us.
Good morning, I'm Yumi Hogan, the First Lady of Maryland. As the first Korean American First Lady in the United States and the first Asian American First Lady in the history of Maryland, I am pleased to join you virtually for this Think Tank 2022 Global Forum. I believe very strongly that all of us here today must lead by example. Lasting change starts at home. We must find a way to use the gifts that we have been blessed with to give back to our communities. My eyes have been opened to so many of the serious problems facing our communities. And as the First Lady, I wanted to do my part of leave my state in a better place than when I found it. I have met so many young people with disabilities, victims of domestic violence, struggling single mothers, pediatric patients, and others facing challenges, including poverty and homelessness. It was through the arts that I became more connected to those communities and became more aware of their needs. I plan to continue to work to help children and families in need, to encourage young women and men to be future leaders and to be role model for others. Please accept my sincere congratulations for the many ways that you are promoting peace in countries around the globe, including my beloved homeland of Korea. Best wishes for great success and a safe and happy New Year. Thank you. Good morning, I'm Yumi Hogan.
Thank you so much. Their office was such a pleasant office to work with, and I know they serve very well. So our next person that will offer her remarks is Honorable Emilia Alfaro Defranco from Paraguay. And Honorable Franco is the former First Lady and Senator of Paraguay of the National Liberal Party. During her term as Senator, she introduced 40 bills in the Senate, which are currently in force and which provide better living conditions for the people of Paraguay. Parallel to her activities as Senator, she founded and is president to the TESPE Paraguay Foundation, which is a social work foundation. In partnership with the Metropolitan University of Asunción, the TESPE Paraguay Foundation develops activities for children and underprivileged youth. The senator also supports the elderly through a club she founded, which benefits the most vulnerable sectors of society. We want to thank you so much for coming virtually on this program. It's such an honor to see you. Thank you, Madam Emilia Franco. You have the floor.
Muy buenos días. Muchas gracias por la invitación y compartir con todos ustedes desde la distancia. Ya las estamos extrañando nuestras cumbres en donde nos encontrábamos todos. Quisiera comenzar agradeciendo la convocatoria a la Cumbre Mundial 2022 y abordar el importante tema de la reconciliación y la paz en la península de Corea. Mi más sincera gratitud a la fundadora y anfitriona de la UPF, la doctora Katja Han-moon, nuestra Madre de la Paz. También agradezco a los presidentes, Su Excelencia el Primer Ministro del Reino de Camboya, Su Excelencia Han Ki-moon, ex secretario general de las Naciones Unidas. Todos tenemos como sociedad el compromiso de seguir trabajando en la construcción de un mundo de paz, especialmente en un momento en que las relaciones internacionales están muy tensas y hay amenazas de una variedad de frentes, incluida la pandemia, el conflicto entre naciones, el cambio climático, la pobreza, la ruptura familiar. Se hace más necesario que nunca que todos juntos pongamos el mayor esfuerzo para seguir construyendo un mundo más humano, con respeto a la dignidad de todos. Un mundo con justicia social, un mundo con acceso a la salud, a la educación y a bienes elementales como un hogar, como alimentos, como el agua potable. Son temas fundamentales que se debe tratar para poder hablar de paz en los pueblos. Como amigos de siempre, como pueblos hermanos, no podemos olvidar temas fundamentales como la paz en la península de Corea. Su búsqueda y consolidación dará esperanza de que la paz se pueda lograr a nivel mundial. Debemos trabajar para generar esa confianza, respeto mutuo, la reconciliación y la cooperación. La paz se debe buscar no solo a través de una diplomacia tradicional, sino también a través de una amplia gama de enfoques que puede involucrar a una sociedad civil, al comercio, la ayuda humanitaria, el diálogo interreligioso, el intercambio cultural, el turismo, el deporte, etc. Como mujeres líderes, tenemos el sentido de responsabilidad y el corazón de guiar a los jóvenes y las familias para el establecimiento de un mundo mejor y más solidario. Hay un dicho, una golondrina no hace primavera. Por eso tenemos que seguir promoviendo una y otra vez la mayor y mejor participación de las mujeres, ya que las mujeres, sea el lugar que estén ocupando, cambian realidades con mucha entrega, protagonismo y audacia. Es por eso que la mujer es un eslabón fundamental en la hora de construir democracia en nuestros países y por ende paz entre las naciones. Hoy en Paraguay luchamos por menos feminicidios, por igualdad laboral, los derechos humanos para nuestros indígenas y nuestros adultos mayores, por el fin de los secuestros y también por el fin del narcotráfico. Las mujeres paraguayas refundaron el país después de varias guerras y sobre todo la guerra de la Triple Alianza. Nuestro compromiso es hacer lo mismo hoy, levantar el país con educación, salud y sin corrupción, pero por sobre todo con Dios en nuestros corazones. Paraguay es un país, aunque diametralmente opuesto en el globo terráqueo con Corea, estamos muy relacionados, ya que en la década del 70 más de 100.000 familias coreanas inmigraron al Paraguay y esas familias hoy forman parte de la identidad, de la cultura paraguaya. Es por eso que pedimos más fuerte aún la unificación de las dos Coreas, como también de las dos Chinas, paz en todos los conflictos que ponen en peligro nuestra supervivencia como raza humana. La problemática de la península de Crimea, el medio ambiente, el Medio Oriente y otros que nos interpelan a todos como sociedad mundial. Finalmente, digo que lo que para el hombre es imposible, para Dios todo es posible. Desde Asunción, con un calor de 40 grados, seguimos rezando, pidiéndole al Supremo que por favor llegue la ansiada paz y que la unidad del pueblo coreano se vuelva por fin una realidad para la tranquilidad de todos los que llevamos a Corea en el corazón. Por eso, más que nunca, nuestra oración por la paz de la península coreana y que desde ahí seamos un faro, una luz que ilumine a todo el mundo, dando nuevas esperanzas para construir un mundo mejor para todos. Muchas gracias.
Thank you. That was such a wonderful speech. Thank you. Our next speech will be from Dr. Rima Sala. And Rima Sala served as a member of the UN's independent high-level panel on peace operations from 2014 to 15, and as the Deputy Special Representative of the Secretary General, and for the UN mission in the Central African Republic and Chad. In addition, Dr. Sala has had a distinguished career with UNICEF. Her services include the Deputy Executive Director from 2004 to 2007 and from 2011 to 2012. She was the Regional Director for West and Central Africa from 1999 to 2004 and UNICEF representative in Vietnam and Burkina Faso, as well as head of the office in Quetta, Pakistan. As a highly effective advocate for the rights of children and women in armed conflict and post-conflict situations, she has contributed to 2 Security Council resolutions, number 1612 on child rights violation and 1325 on peace, women, and security. Dr. Sala has received many awards of distinction from several non-government organizations and UN member states, including the French Legion of Honor. And on September 23, 2021, Dr. Sala received the Peace and Conflict Resolution at the J. Reuben Clark Law School at Brigham Young University. In October 2015, Dr. Sala was elected chair of the newly formed Early Childhood Peace Consortium, which was launched in 2013. of which Yale and UNICEF are founding members. This brought together leaders from international associations, academia, practice, philanthropy, networks, media, and development. Dr. Sala is currently with the Child Studies Center at Yale School of Medicine. She is co-editor of Pathways to Peace, the transformative power of children and families, a volume published by the MIT Press. We're grateful to have someone with us who has firsthand experience with presidents, first ladies, and who could provide direct intervention in war-torn areas. Welcome, Dr. Sala. We're so happy to have you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Cindy.
Thank you.
Excellencies, distinguished participants, good morning and good afternoon. It gives me great pleasure to participate in Think Tank 2022 Global Forum. I thank the Universal Peace Federation, the International Association of First Ladies for Peace, and the Women's Federation for World Peace for honoring me with their invitation to speak in this important session, Women Leaders Leverage in Peace Building. My presentation will be based on my more than 30 years experience with the United Nations, UNICEF, and the Department of Peacekeeping Operation at headquarters in New York, and serving in many countries in the world, including Asia, Africa, and the Middle East, as well as a member of the United Nations Secretary General High-Level Independent Panel, and also on my personal narrative. Allow me to start with my personal story as my career and vision to participate in building an inclusive world of peace, justice, and development were shaped by it. I was born a refugee, and I often asked my parents, what is a refugee? Why are we refugees? As a child, it was difficult to comprehend that we were different and what could we do to be part of normal life again. I also realized from a very young age that my family and my people were deprived of their rights and social justice. Later, when I conducted my research for my doctoral thesis in cultural and development anthropology, by living in Palestinian refugee camps, I witnessed the terrible effects that displacement and war have on people's lives, and particularly on women and children. They are trapped in devastating situations that disrupt the fabric of their society and compromise the very foundation of their institution, most importantly, the family, that finds itself dispersed and living in other refugee camps or in different countries. But I also learned that more indicators are needed to capture the full extent of people's pain, loss, and sadness. It was also difficult to measure human dignity, moral courage, and wisdom. The people I lived with had tremendous strength in the face of the many tragedies that they formed, particularly women, grandmothers, mothers, and daughters who rose to the occasion to support their families. Most importantly, to keep their dignity, the memory and the cultural norms of their villages, towns alive, and pass it from one generation to the other. But they also women realize that their future and the future of the family lie in a better future for their children, including access to quality education and peace that would allow them one day to return to their villages and towns. That is why they were grateful to the care and assistance they received from the United Nations. I always felt that working with the United Nations was a fulfillment of a dream. The United Nations Charter, the Convention and Resolution provide an ideal concrete platform for the pursuit of peace, social justice, social progress, and human rights. I joined UNICEF in 1987 in the era where women's rights and children's rights were gaining ground. As such, the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, CEDAW, was adopted by the General Assembly in 1979, then reinstituted in 1981, and adopted by 189 states, further reinforced by the Beijing Declaration and the Platform of Action adopted in 1995. The Convention on the Rights of the Child was ratified by the UN General Assembly in 1989 and became one of the most widely ratified international human rights treaties. In the countries where I served, UNICEF teams and partners worked together to surmount all difficulties and barriers that hinder the realization of rights of women and children. We advocated with governments, with presidents, with parliament, and particularly with first ladies and women leaders to increase the budgets for basic services in health, education, and protection. For example, in West and Central Africa, first ladies and women ministers organized themselves. And yes, when first ladies organize themselves, yes, you see their power. And with the support of UNICEF and other UN agencies, they started to advocate for more effective maternal health programs, HIV/AIDS programs. They advocated advocated to increase the access of girls to education, to quality education, and to stop trafficking of girls, of children and of girls in their countries and regionally. As a result, many girls were returned to their home countries, and laws were passed against trafficking of children and girls. Some first ladies and women leaders in countries marked by violent conflict appealed to leaders, to men leaders, to policymakers, telling them to stop the language of war and hatred and promote the language of mediation, national reconciliation towards building inclusive and lasting peace in their country and in the region. In 2008, when the UN Secretary General, Mr. Ban Ki-moon, appointed me as Deputy Special Representative in Chad, it was a peace operation. And it was a start, at that time also it was a start of a new era at the United Nations, a new vision for building peaceful societies where people are the center of peace and development, reinforcing the role of women's full and equal participation in conflict resolution as stipulated in Resolution 1325, which you all know was the first landmark resolution adopted by the Security Council in October 2000, addressing the impact of war on women and the importance of women's full and equal participation in conflict resolution, peace building, humanitarian response, and in post-conflict reconstruction. Yes, in the MINURCAT mission in Chad, Resolution 1325 and its implementation was a beacon of hope to promote reconciliation activities and support the creation of conflict reduction mechanism for the peaceful resolution of conflict. For example, in Eastern Chad, between refugees from Sudan, internally displaced people, and host communities in the eastern part of Chad. You know that our efforts were supported and could not be realized without the efforts of the First Lady of Chad, who spearheaded a campaign on the implementation of 1325 in the country. The First Lady and women ministers, government ministers, organized meetings among women of different groups that led to more understanding among them towards reconciliation and social cohesion. As such, building a broader coalition for peace is only women that can build a broader coalition for peace and can build peace on all levels. These are examples of commitment and action in the pursuit of peace, led by First Ladies and women leaders in West and Central Africa. They can certainly be emulated by Korean women towards peaceful unification of the Korean Peninsula. And you know that the great advantage of women in the Republic of Korea is that they have already a national plan of action of 1325 that was adopted by the government in 2014. The National Plan of Action is designed to protect women during conflict and define their substantial roles in peace and security. And now, in the Republic of Korea, they are at their second plan of action that reinforces more the implementation and monitoring of the plan and the involvement of civil society. Women in the Republic of Korea and in Korea in general have to raise their voices and claim their important role in building peace. They have to sit at the table. They had to be part of the discussion. And I always say, there is no better time than now for First Ladies and women leaders to unite their strength, to change the tide of violence and build a peaceful world for us and the generation to come. I will never forget the voices of women and girls and young women in refugee camps, in cities and villages, who told me, we are and we can be part of the solution. We are agents of change. So let's do it for those women and bring back humanity. I would like also at the end to pay tribute to Madame Jihan Moon for her vision and for her devotion to the cause of peace in the peninsula and in the world. So let's do it all together. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Rima Sala. So grateful to have you here. I was honored to be introduced by the doctor from Alexa Ward, her good friend. And it was such an honor that we could have her speak, representing all she's done. On our panel, we had listed Mrs. Anne-Marie Davis, the First Lady of the Bahamas. And so we would just like to convey her regards. She was very much looking forward to addressing the Think Tank 2022, but due to pressing local matters in her nation of Bahamas, she could only send her wishes and that everything is a success. So we wanted to include her. Now, we have a different part of the session. I think Dr. Sala and the other presenters, Dr. Franco, they have many things they'd like to share. And we have a panelist of Jean Becker and Angelica Selly. And so we're going to give them each the floor. They're going to share about what they represent. And then they're responsive. They can address something they've heard the speakers say, and then later on we'll have questions where we can all have joint discussions. So I'd like to give a little background of Jean Becker. She was the chief of staff for George H.W. Bush from March 1st, 1994 until his death on November 30th, 2018. She previously served as Deputy Press Secretary to First Lady Barbara Bush from 1989 to 1992. Before joining the Bush White House staff in 1989, Ms. Becker was a newspaper reporter for 10 years, including a 4-year stint at USA Today, where her duties included covering the 1988 presidential election and a page 1 editor. Her book about Mrs. Bush, called Pearls of Wisdom, released on March 3rd, 2020, and her book about President Bush, The Man I Knew, released June 1st, 2021, both became New York Times bestsellers. Were on that list. And this I added myself, but Jean Becker is really a true historian with records showing her books of being on the driver's seat of history in her over 29 years of service as both Chief of Staff and Deputy Press Secretary to a beloved president and her family. So we really want to thank Jean for being here with us. So we'll give Jean Becker the floor. Thank you, Jean.
Thank you very much, Cindy. It is such an honor for me to be with this incredible group of women. I feel a little bit out of my league, so I will try my best to keep up. I was so inspired by everything I've heard from our opening speakers. I have completely changed what I'm going to say in these 2 to 3 minutes. There's just a couple of points I want to make. Number one, I hope it's okay in this panel about the power of women. I'm going to start by talking about a man. His name would be George Herbert Walker Bush. And I was thinking about one of the things that he would say to all of you if he were here today is that nothing is impossible. Peace on the Korean Peninsula was very important to him. He had many great friends in Korea. I had the great privilege of once traveling to Korea with him. But the two things I would like to talk about that he did is the reunification of Germany, which was not easy. It was greatly opposed by Margaret Thatcher and by Francois Mitterrand. There was a very famous quote from Francois Mitterrand. He said to President Bush, when President Bush wanted to promote the reunification of Germany, you know, the memories of World War II were very raw still in Europe. And President Mitterrand of France said to President Bush, I love Germany. I love Germany so much, I think there should be two of them. But he managed to convince a very reluctant Margaret Thatcher, a very reluctant Francois Mitterrand, needless to say, Mikhail Gorbachev, that the reunification of Germany was good for Europe and it was good for the world. And he accomplished, his optimism never failed him, and he accomplished that task. Number two, something that he did right after becoming president in 1989, about a month into his presidency, he went to Japan to attend the funeral of Emperor Hirohito. And many of his World War II veteran peers were shocked that he would go to the funeral of Emperor Hirohito. I will remind everybody that President Bush was shot down on September 2nd, 1944, over the island of Chichijima by, the Japanese. And so he came from such a strong, he had so much credibility on this issue because he knew he was at war with Japan. And what he said to all of his critics is, we're now friends. Japan is now one of our greatest allies. And we moved on. We resolved our issues and our anger and our grief from World War II. I just wanted to bring up those two examples of how President Bush truly felt nothing is impossible. Yeah. If you just keep trying, if you just have an open mind. And on that point, I'm going to swivel to Barbara Bush, whom I had the great privilege of working for her in the White House. I had the great privilege of traveling all over the world with the two of them. And when we were overseas, I was always in charge of her schedule. And watching her with her fellow First Ladies was so inspiring to me. She was such a great leader. And yes, perhaps it was their spouses that were in a different room making the decisions, but don't ever underestimate the power of a First Lady. Many people would tell you that Barbara Bush's friendship with Raisa Gorbachev was very powerful and very important. Raisa Gorbachev and Nancy Reagan did not get along. And I won't go into any of those details, but Mrs. Bush and Raisa Gorbachev became very close. Mrs. Bush was also very close to Dennis Thatcher. She was close to all of her peers in the first span of the first ladies. It was a very important relationship. Barbara Bush was a force of nature all on her own. And I would like to end my few minutes here using her words, because she was the first lady. I was not. I just want to read to you a very brief reading from the book, Prose of Wisdom, which is full of all of her words of advice. This is from a commencement speech she gave here in the United States in 1991. She was very concerned about intolerance, about bullying. Her words were really meant for the young people of the United States, but I think they're important to the entire world. And I think they're important for the people who are trying to tackle some of our biggest international issues right now. So she's talking about intolerance. As most of you know, one of the great strengths of the United States is we're a country of immigrants, but sometimes our great diversity can lead us down the wrong path. And that is what she was trying to address. Again, this is 1991. I would like for you to think about your relationships in a broader sense, the way you feel about and interact with people beyond your loved ones. I'm talking about the great need for better tolerance in our society. Tolerance is much more than just respecting people of a different race. It is a constant stream of little acts in our daily lives, big and small, choices we face every day in the way we think about, the way we talk about, and the way we deal with other human beings. It's about respecting people who have a physical or mental handicap, people who grew up different from the way you did, people who speak a different language or practice a different religion, people who are fatter or thinner or older or younger. Political extremists roam the land, setting citizens against one another based on their class or their religion. Such bullying is outrageous and not worthy of a nation grounded in the values of tolerance and respect. Let us fight back against the boring politics of division and derision. We must conquer the temptation to assigning bad motives to people who disagree with us. We must build a society in which people can join in common causes without having to surrender their identities. She was talking to the students, but I think she would say this to all the great women on this call. You can lead the way. Share your thoughts and experiences and your hopes and frustrations. Defend other people's right to speak. If harmony is our goal, let's pursue harmony. Those are the words of the great Barbara Bush. Thank you, Cindy, and thank all of you.
That was so wonderful. I loved hearing that. It's a reminder with us when we see our wonderful President Bush that the group we have, although we represent women, we are so happy to work equally with men and women on the same banner. So that reminds us of how tolerance goes beyond gender and everything. So thank you so much for that beautiful insight. Our next panelist that I'll introduce is Miss Angelica Selly. She's has been the president of the Women's Federation for World Peace, WFWP, since 2010. She's an educator, motivational speaker, writer, and ambassador for peace, and has worked with government officials around the world, as well as with leaders of different faiths. In 2004, based on her work with racial reconciliation in the United States, she received the Crown of Peace Award for exemplary leadership in reconciliation and peacemaking from the International and Interreligious Council for Peace. As the founder of the Women's Federation for World Peace Leadership of the Heart curriculum, Ms. Selly's passion is to empower women and men in peace leadership, especially the next generation. Since 2012, she has served as the national chair of the Global Women's Peace Network. USA, a project of the Women's Federation for World Peace International, and one of the partner organizations of UPF, which is an NGO and General Consultative Status of the United Nations. Under the leadership of WFWP International President Dr. Julia Moon, and in support of the Universal Peace Federation's ongoing speaker series on peaceful reunification of North and South Korea, the Global Peace Women's Network, chapters of Korea, Japan, and the United States initiated a speaker forum series under the theme, Women's Leadership in Reconciliation and Peacemaking, a Unified Korea. These virtual educational webinars are designed for hearing firsthand experiences of those from both North and South Korea and from the defectors and their descendants who are currently living in Korea, the United States, and Japan. The most recent GWPN Global Women's Peace Network Forum was a mini talk show that featured the North Korean defector and assistant screenwriter of a 2019 hit Korea drama called Crash Landing on You, which offered a very human perspective of the North Korean people. And it opened many hearts and minds around the world on issues of the divided Koreas. So today we are happy to have Miss Sally with us, and who, by the way, is a native of Germany. She will share her thoughts and also would like to ask questions at the end to our presenters. So Miss Angelica can have the floor.
Thank you so much, Cindy.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, distinguished women leaders, ladies and gentlemen, ambassadors for peace. It is really my great honor to be a panelist today at this IFL Peace session of Think Tank 2022. And I'm very happy that women are getting the floor because we do represent half of humanity, don't we? And so there are certain elements we can bring to the table to bring not only balance, but as we heard from our wonderful, distinguished speakers today, we have a gift for conflict resolution. Each and every one of them, Dr. Rima Sala, Dr. Mrs. Defranco, and also First Lady Yumi Hogan spoke about what I will be sharing a little bit about and summarizing maybe from my own experience, and then I will ask a question. It's about women in peace leadership. So why women? What do we bring to the table? It is basically our innate nature and God-given gift to experience that we bring to the table as the first educators and nurturers of human beings, and also as co-leaders in our family. Every woman is also a leader in the family. And it is in the family, which was mentioned several times by Dr. Rima and others, where we use these intrinsic gifts and intuition, resilience, wisdom, strength to solve all kinds of interpersonal, economic, and work-related problems. We often have to think outside the box to come up with answers where there are no answers. And at such times, we use our God-given capacity of mediation, facilitation, and problem solving to bring harmony among fighting siblings. Doesn't it sound familiar, fighting siblings? Oftentimes, we also see the possibilities invisible to others and make those possibilities a reality by feminine determination and encouragement. And frequently, when we don't have no more energy left and we are at the end of our resources, we rely on the indomitable faith in our divine creator, following our voice of the heart. All these qualities are necessary ingredients for peace leadership, especially being able to see realities through the lens of the heart. As you could hear through all the presentations, there was lots of heart expressed. So what do I mean by that more in particular? Where there is a conflict, women in general tend to first seek to understand both sides of the problem, putting ourselves in the position of those on each side to feel and experience each perspective. Once we understand the opposing point of view, we can then explore the common ground and the Korean heart in this case. So the difference between the two Koreas, based on their extreme ideological division, that is the difference, is, I'm sorry, I have to first talk about the common ground, right? I said, what is the common ground? The common ground is, of course, the Korean culture, their language, their history, and the Korean heart. That's the common ground, despite differences. the difference that we found out is the lifestyle. As this demonstrated in the Korean drama, The Crash Landing on You, you can see that the North Korean defectors actually yearn to go back, some of them, because they cannot adjust to the lifestyle in the South. And then when they get to the South, they face incredible discrimination. So we have a situation that creates incredible tension, and that those differences, also their different expectations of what reunification looks like, what should be the outcome, and how they see the world. Those are the challenges that we're dealing with. And those stark differences in perception and thinking create additional barriers that have been a problem for government and Korean people, barriers of utter mistrust and even fear. I think Mrs. Defranco mentioned about creating trust, right, and reconciliation. So fear and mistrust are strong emotions, and they surely taint all kinds of deliberations and decisions on both sides. They are invisible obstacles to peace, and they must be addressed for any peace to be authentic. So in the case of North and South Korea, we see that we are facing a universal issue, because all of our countries, as we were relating to our countries, have such divisions. Here in the United States, for example, we face strong emotions, adversity, and distrust over racial, political, and economic issues. And even due to COVID, we have divisions here in America. So, as we said, we need mediation. And that's where I believe the women leadership comes in, peace leadership comes in. And so I thank the ladies for sharing so clearly and passionately some solutions already, what can be done. But I want to ask the question. So in the case of North and South Korea, what can women contribute from the outside? Because in the end, it is the Korean people who have to solve the issue between them, right? But what can we do from the outside to create an environment of greater trust between North and South Korea and diffuse or soften the intense emotions or perceptions of hate and fear? Thank you.
So do you want to ask somebody in particular?
Yeah, maybe
question?
Mrs. Defranco.
Okay. It will take a minute. They will translate the question to her.
So.
Maybe you could repeat the question.
Okay. What can women contribute from the outside, meaning us here and other women from other countries, to create an environment for greater trust between the North and South Korean people?
Bueno, ¿me escucha, verdad? ¿Me escuchan? Ok. Bueno, necesitamos generar, estaba hablando la anterior a nuestra invitada, también en que las primeras damas unirnos, hacer los mensajes dentro de nuestros países. Le decía a nuestra presidenta Rossi, de la Federación de Mujeres, siempre que necesitamos que Paraguay esté más enterado de la situación que viven las dos Coreas. Hoy día hablamos con nuestros hijos, nuestros jóvenes no están enterados de la situación de crisis mundial que tenemos, no solo en la península de Corea, sino en otros países, en otros continentes. Sería bueno que eso se pueda tener más publicidad, más acercamiento, de trabajar sobre esa fuerza y que entonces nos vean los coreanos con esa confianza de que todos queremos que se solucionen los problemas, que se dejen de lado las ambiciones personales y que se piense en los dos pueblos, tanto Corea del Sur como del Norte. Pero la confianza lo vamos a ganar, creo yo, también en el sentido que sumemos gente a que estemos enterados de lo que sucede. Nuestro país, decía yo, está del otro lado de Corea. En el globo terráqueo estamos totalmente opuestos. Sin embargo, le debemos mucho a Corea. Paraguay le debe mucha ayuda a Corea, y también Corea Paraguay abrió sus puertas en el momento difícil a familias coreanas. Por eso creo que siempre he dicho, mayor participación de Paraguay, pero ¿cómo? Haciendo más publicidad, más difusión de lo que sucede en la península de Corea. Y en ese caso, sumar gente que participemos, luchemos por esa paz para que las dos Coreas nos tengan esa confianza, esa apertura, y que podamos las mujeres pedir que termine con este conflicto.
That sounds like good advice. We could take a whole team of strong women leaders with the presidents and go to North Korea. How about that? So I'd like to ask Jean if she has a question that she'd like to ask.
I do have a question, and I would love for all the panelists to answer this. All our speakers, because I would love to hear what they all have to say. As the Americans who are on this call know, we sometimes think that what goes on in the rest of the world, why should we be worried about that? I'm sure every country has that issue a little bit, but we think, put America first. Why should we be worried what's happening anywhere else? I definitely disagree with that, but I would love these very smart, articulate women to explain, why is it important to the whole world what happens on the Korean Peninsula? Some of you already addressed that, but I would love for you to talk about it again, because it's so important for all of us to hear.
Dr. Rima Sala, would you like to?
Yes, thank you very much, Ms. Becker, and I really enjoyed your presentation. As a person from the United Nations, I think the world is connected, and what happens in a country affects the peace and security of the whole of globally. And that is why we have to know about the situation in every country, and particularly women. Maybe it is the time for women to try to understand the problems in other countries. And for example, coming from the UN, maybe they should be aware also for the tools that we have in our hand. The United Nations, many resolutions and conventions were adopted. And countries, when they come to the United Nations, they adopt them. When leaders come to the United Nations, they are on board. So we have to make them accountable to what they sign at the United Nations. And it's only women who can make them accountable. As I said, when women leaders in West and Central Africa told their presidents, what are you doing? You have signed conventions and resolutions. You have to be accountable for the wars that you are causing.
Yes, that sounds so true.
That is why I say we have women, we have to work together. We have really to unite our strength. We have the strength, and we have to unite it. All women from all countries in the world.
Angelica, would you like to ask another question?
Well, actually, I would like to hear also Dr. Sala's answer to my question.
Okay.
You kind of answered it already, right? We work together because we can support. Yeah, right.
Mm-hmm.
But is there anything in particular that you can think of, also based on your experience in your country when there is war? What is this? Maybe something that women uniquely can do to help and work to show solidarity with our Korean women.
Well, as I said, they have to raise their voices. And I know that women in Korea are strong. I have worked with women at the United Nations the lady who was the Minister of Foreign Affairs in Korea, I think she was a strong lady and one of the ladies who advocated for 1325 and for the participation of women, and the women that should sit at the table, not only at the dinner table, but they should sit at the table to bring peace to their countries. Because, and all the studies show now, when women are involved, you know, that they can bring, you know, they can bring groups together. They can bridge the divide, and they can inculcate peace also in their children, which is very important, and inculcate peace in every community. Without women, we cannot really, because you cannot, my experience at the United Nations, we cannot only sign documents in a country at war between warring parties. This doesn't mean that we have peace. The peace has to be felt by every member of the community and of this country. It has to be part of their life. As we know now, the examples of Colombia, we were very happy that, you know, everything was signed, we were happy, but still it needs work, you know, so for all people to buy on this peace.
Thank you.
I had read from the U.S. Institute of Peace, and the research found that when women were included with the men in the peace process, there was a 35% greater chance that peace would be achieved. So I think working together is really a key to address our problems in the world. And some points they pointed out, when women were involved, conflict could be reduced. It would advance stability, and the response was more effective for the security threats, reducing the security threats. So I feel if we can move people to action by what the panel has spoken about today is the use of track 2 or soft diplomacy in negotiations, where it's not governmental initiated, but initiated from people in all walks of life. I wanted to ask Madame Franco, if I could ask the question, if she sees the North Korean unification in a similar way as what happened in East and West Germany, if she feels it could be something like that.
Bueno, todos los problemas mundiales que tenemos en todos los países se debe tratar seriamente, ya que afecta de alguna u otra manera a cada país. Paraguay es un país tan pequeño que necesita de todos los países, así que pienso que todo conflicto armado, todo conflicto entre países, lo primero que debemos hacer es estar en medio de todo, tratando de solucionar, de llevar esa paz. Solamente también lo vamos a hacer con Dios. De otra manera, nadie puede contra las oraciones, ¿verdad? Y es lo que nos puede fortalecer al mundo.
Thank you so much. Oh, Jean, go ahead and ask the question.
Well, I more just wanted to talk about, again, I'm just so inspired by all these incredible women. I think one of the great strengths of women is that we lead by example, maybe a little better than men. I think women are doers. And one of the best examples I know would be, of course, Barbara Bush, who truly changed the conversation in this country and maybe around the world when she held a baby right after she became First Lady who was HIV positive. At that point in 1989, everyone was scared to death of AIDS. And when she went and visited a wonderful place in DC called Grandma's House and held an HIV infected baby, it was a picture that went around the world.
Yeah.
And then when in London, she visited AIDS patients with Princess Diana. And I think that's one of the great strengths of women. Some great examples on this panel and our speakers is that one of the best things you can do is not just talk about it, but just do it. Do it.
Yeah.
And lead by example.
That's truly a memorable thing. At that time, people did not want to touch an AIDS patient, but she went through the stereotype. There's probably many stereotypes we have to go through as we work with other nations that are different from ourselves. Dr. Rima Sala, did you have something you wanted to say about that?
Can you again repeat the question, please? Yeah.
It looked like you had something interesting you'd like to say. You want to have the floor
Thank
to
you.
offer?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I really enjoyed this webinar, and I think this webinar of all women is really amazing and really reinforces the strengths of every woman. And when I talk about women, I don't only talk about women leaders and first ladies, but every woman in every village, in every refugee camp, in every displacement camp. Those are the women that we should bring their voices. We bring their voices to the United Nations, and we should bring their voices in every meeting that we are. Because they will help us, as they told me in many, many occasions when I was in Africa, and also during our tour for the high-level panel on peace operations that former Secretary General Ban Ki-moon called for. We were 16 people on this panel, and we were, I think, 4 women on this. And we went to all the continents of the world, and we met with women. Some women told us, "What are you doing, the United Nations? We don't feel that we are part of this. We see your big cars, your white cars, but what are you doing to every woman in this village?" And this is what is very important. How do we bring this voice? And this reinforced my, passion to build peace, but start also in the communities, to start building peace in the communities.
Yes, that's so important and so true. Part of the remarkable we get from all people working together is that everyone has a different way to peace. I know our First Lady Yumi Hogan has reached many people through arts. So arts and culture are a way to peace, and some people do it through academia or parliamentarians, and there's many ways that can be as broad as the people that are represented. So it's nice to hear from the grassroots, like that's something Angelica works with, meeting many people and spreading the truth wide, even through the Global Peace Women's Network. If she wants to tell a little bit about her grassroots
and
work.
I just want to add that the First Ladies are at the forefront.
Yes.
They are listened to. People listen to them. As many First Ladies in West and Central Africa told me, use us. Our husbands listen to us, and also members of the country listen to us. We are in the forefront. So my appeal to First Ladies is to listen to every woman in their country. I know it's difficult sometimes, but we have now all the means to do it.
Yes, absolutely. And we should not be afraid to stand up.
Yeah, if I could make a comment, I totally agree. Also with Ms. Jean Becker, women are peacemakers because they're acting, right? Peace has to do with action and doing and leading by example. And also the collaboration, I believe the First Ladies and the civil society together is the real power, right? Together, because the grassroots is dealing with realities and the leadership sees the bigger picture and can make changes and makes legislation and so forth. And so I have to mention Dr. Hak Ja Han Moon because she is the woman who is leading by example, right? And that's why there is hope. The rallies of hope are because she is actually showing her own investment, right? And she's bringing us all together in the think tank, right? it's tremendous to see how men and women start thinking about the Korean Peninsula because of her initiative. I would like to give her a round of applause if we could, because of her, we are here, and there is, men and women together, working like two wheels of an engine to bring forth solutions. It's kind of like a back and forth, we throw the ball to each other. We need each other, and we need also the women on the ground who can tell us. And I went to many of the CSW, the Commission on the Status of Women, sessions, and many when women come together in March every year, they talk about all the difficulties in their countries, and they have good ideas, but no one listens. Sometimes the solutions do come from the ground, where
Yes.
people experience what is needed. You don't know what it's like when we are in the war, or when we have nothing to eat. So that to integrate that is true leadership and peace leadership, to respect, like you said, Dr. Sala, everyone, and also Mrs. Franco, everyone is agreeing. This is maybe another thing where women are unique. We kind of feel each other, even we speak different languages, we come from different background, but there's a commonality among us beyond even titles, beyond position. So the grassroots are important, and to collaborate with those who are on the same path, right? That's also important at this time. There are many forces in the world, and hate and so forth, but there are also many good developments and leaders who focus on creating a better world in the midst of COVID, in the midst of challenges, to keep that positive view and vision, that comes from a higher place, actually. So that's what I feel here, you ladies.
Go ahead, Jean.
Can I just quickly add, Angelica inspired me to share with all of you one of Mrs. Bush's favorite quotes, which came from Mother Teresa.
Oh.
Mother Teresa once said, "Everybody wants to change the world, but nobody wants to do the dishes." And what Mrs. Bush loved about that quote is, for the first ladies and the women who have such a strong bully pulpit, we're counting on you to change the world. But talking about the grassroots is so important, because just because you're not a first lady doesn't mean you don't have a job here. Everybody has something that you can do. In fact, it's typically the people who do the dishes who end up contributing most to change. So everybody can do, sometimes it's just the tiniest little step that can make a difference.
Thank you so much. That's so important. And I also, when I'm thinking of Madame Franco, she mentioned God, and usually behind every inspiration is when I pray and really contemplate it, God is always there with giving us an answer. So we can never leave out that power that is within us too, through prayer. So it's 1 minute and our session will be coming to a close. So does anyone feel inspired to add anything to the last? You're sure welcome to.
It's been a wonderful honor. I've learned a lot. You all have inspired me. I'm going to go out and change the world. Or maybe I'll just go do the dishes, but you all have inspired me. Thank you.
And during COVID is when Jean wrote her second book. I think the panelists were asking the book's names if you want to write.
This is the book on President Bush called The Man I Knew. I wrote this last year I wrote this in 2020 during the pandemic. And then this is the book that I quoted Mrs. Bush from. And I'm very grateful to everyone who asked about it. Here they are.
Thank you so much. Truly, we need those kind of pearls of wisdom in our life. Well, thank you, everyone. And our session has come to a close. They will use the room for another session. I'm so grateful for these beautiful panelists and sharing from your heart, your knowledge, and then the message from First Lady Yumi Hogan. Thank you for your investment in the world and what you've done.
Thank you.
Have a good day. Thanks
you.
for